Good evening, Padawans. Sorry for the late post. This week I was focusing on my career. I'm happy as I could be right now. I've been working hard towards a very important goal for a while now, the entirety of the NFL season, actually. Um, for those of you who don't already know, in July of 2020, I contracted COVID. I rarely got sick in my entire life. Had only been hospitalized once in my entire life, and that was for my appendix rupturing. Um, so I guess I have something in common without the dying part of the only individual who died on the Lewis and Clark expedition, because that's what he died from, and there was no real cure back then. They tried, but I'm sure it was a miserable last hour. It's the most pain I was ever in. COVID kind of changed all that. I spent 16 days on a ventilator with a 1% chance of survival, and I had to learn how to drink, eat, stand, and walk again over about a 36 day span. And when I say stand and walk, I mean like a toddler. I had a nurse named Tyler strap me to himself. Tyler was a cool dude, and he was blessed with Daniel Craig looks. Like, that's who he looked like. That guy worked a week-long nighttime shift with me, and the first night he was working with me, he asked me if I had stood up. I said, I haven't even sat up yet. And he's like, we're going to fix that this week. And so he strapped me to himself a half a dozen to 10 times, depending on how busy he was. And he would hold me so that I wouldn't fall, so I could stand and gain some strength in my legs and balance. And then we took baby steps, and he had me walking without help gingerly in 7 days. And then when they sent me to rehab, I was already moving that direction. But it's taken years to recover, and I haven't even come close to working. And I worked 80 hours the week before I got COVID. It was a habit for me. After my divorce in 2005, I just put myself into work because it was way easier than dealing with the emotional baggage. So I worked 60 to 80 hours a week for the better part of 20 years. Uh, anyway, let's go over the season. Um, so I went 175, 96, and 1. That's 20 games lower than I had last year. Last year, Bowen from ESPN beat me by 5 games. He had 200 wins. That's incredible. Just the odds of having that kind of a season is pretty rare. This year we all struggled. In fact, Bowen went 200 last year, and I went 195. So he beat me by 5 games, and he was the only one at CBS or ESPN that beat me last year. I ended up 202 and 81, including the playoffs, and I picked the Eagles to upset the Chiefs by 7. I believe they won by 10, if I recall. So he's the only one that beat me last year nationally, and I've looked for other prognosticators to compare myself to, but really ESPN and CBS are the only ones who do it well. So that's why I compare myself to them. This year, in week 18, I started out tied with Pete Prisco and a couple of games ahead of Dave Richard. So those two were tied with me and 2 games behind me, I believe. And they both ended up beating me by 1. So bravo to them. They had a better week 18 than I did. 18 was a bloodbath. Oh my gosh, trying to pick wins in week 18. Some teams had something to play with or play for, and some teams pretended like they didn't have anything to play for, and they did. It was just a strange last week of football. I mean, week 18, the last week of football, I say week 18 because it is 18 now, But even when it was 17 or 16 back in the day, it's always been a strange week because you just can't predict how teams are going to finish a season. Um, and it was odd, and they both did a better job, and they both leapfrogged me and beat me. So, bravo to Pete and Dave. Okay, so at ESPN, the only one who beat me was Reed. No, Reed. He beat me by one, and I already mentioned that. But last year it was Bowen. This year I beat Bowen by, let's see, 6 games. So I went from 5 games down to 6 games up on Bowen. So I'm kind of proud of that. I avenged my loss last year, so now I have to avenge Pete and Dave at CBS next year, I guess, right? All right, so final picks for this for the first or for wild card weekend. I've got uh, Rams at Carolina. I've got the Rams over Carolina. Carolina has done a great job this year, considering everybody thought they were going to be absolute crap, and then they made the playoffs. Um, but the Rams, man, they look good, and the only reason they are at Carolina is because the NFC West was brutal, with the exception of a certain team that I own a lot of shirts supporting. And every year it's hard to be a Cardinals fan. I love the Cardinals, but for the love of God, can they just not trip over a landmine every single damn year? Apparently not. They should have a dump truck full of either cash or a pickup truck full of gold bars and tell Harbaugh, dude, this truck could be yours if you sign with us, because it's the only way they're ever gonna win. They need a coach that they can count on week in and week out instead of picking last from the litter. They always get the runt. I wouldn't have fired Gannon. I wouldn't have. I'd have fired Petzing last year. Petzing was garbage. And if you've watched my videos and been following along, you already know that's how I feel. He cannot coach at the NFL level. And Gannon lost his job because of his loyalty to Petzing. You got to admire his loyalty, especially if your name is Drew Petzing, but didn't help him save his job. There were games where Drew Petzing targeted Marvin Harrison Jr. 4 times. How do you target your number one wide receiver 4 times? Do you think Joe Burrow is not going to target T. Higgins more than 4 times, or Chase more than 4 times? You know he's going to each of those guys at least 10 times, and that's why they end up getting over 100 yards. You can't target your best players. And then they figured out that Michael Wilson can play football. That would have been useful information in week 1 and 2 and 3 and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, enough about my team, because they're not in the playoffs. They weren't in the playoffs last year or the year before. We're detecting a pattern here, aren't we, folks? They've been around for 127 years, and this year will be an exception for him, but Patrick Mahomes has more playoff wins in his career than the Arizona Cardinals do in their entire existence. Okay. Green Bay at Chicago. I am going with the Bears at home. This is a toss-up game. In fact, most of these games are going to be toss-up games because they're the playoffs. Some of the road teams are really good because they didn't win their division. So it should make for a very interesting day tomorrow. But I'm going with Chicago at home because I've not picked them correctly all year. I've got a lot of losses not being able to figure out Chicago. Buffalo at Jacksonville. This is an easy one for me, even though they're both good teams. I'm going with Jacksonville at home. Man, they have been awesome the last 2 months. They have really figured out how to win, and Buffalo has been struggling. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they beat good teams, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they beat bad teams, sometimes they don't. So the best line I heard all year, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, and this isn't mine, this is somebody else's, but I don't know who it was, so I can't give them credit. They said, If Buffalo's offense played against Buffalo's defense, they'd be 17-0. That's a great line. I do wish I had to come up with it. Okay. And I'm a historian primarily, so that's why I go into the whole wanting to give somebody credit. If I knew who it was, I would have given him credit because that's what historians do. All right, so we've got San Francisco at Philadelphia. Uh, this is going to be a really good game, but because it's on the road for San Francisco, um, I like San Francisco in this one. They're more banged up than any other team in the playoffs because the only team that's more banged up than them was my team, and they aren't in the playoffs. So, but San Francisco is so well coached, and the GM is so good. I mean, I remember watching him play. He has always been exceptional at whatever he does. It's how I try to live my life as well. I don't do things I'm not good at, ever. Why would I do something I'm not good at? I choose to do the things I do well, which is why I've always been successful at the things I've done. That's a lesson in life. Trust me. If you figure out what you're good at, you do that, and that's how you make a decent living. Do the things you love, do the things you're good at, and you'll have a pretty good life. Um, so I've got San Francisco at Philadelphia winning. So I'm going to take San Fran. I do think it's close, though. I think all of these will be. And then we've got New England at home against the Chargers. I'm going to go with New England. They've been on fire all year. Um, they've dominated the AFC, and it's an AFC match. So I'm going to go with New England at home. And Drake May is probably going to be the MVP this year. He's been really, really good. And then Monday night, we've got Houston at Pittsburgh. Uh, Pittsburgh managed to slip to the right, slip to the left, slip backwards, and somehow lose forward, and they made the playoffs. Houston should win this one handedly. I don't think Pittsburgh has the firepower. They've got a great coach, Mike Tomlinson. I kind of hope Pittsburgh fires him because then maybe the Cardinals could somehow get a good coach for once. But if they're not dumb, and the Rooney family has not had a record of being dumb, in fact, the Rooney Rule is a good example of just how amazing that ownership family is. Some teams it's just superficial, but it's named after the late Art Rooney, and you got to respect that. So Houston at Pittsburgh, I'm taking Houston. I didn't do points for this one, so let's go 27 and 17. So 44 total points. I'm almost always right in that ballpark because I just try to figure out how many touchdowns and field goals a team might get. And so I'm rarely above 50 or below 40. It's usually somewhere in that area, that range. And I'm pretty close most of the time. If it's a really bad team in regular season, I might go a little lower, obviously. Or if it's two really good offenses, I might go higher. But sometimes two good offenses, the defenses just match up well, and it's a low-scoring game, and vice versa. So anyway, that's my wild card week picks. As you can tell, I have a smile on my face. I had a really good couple of weeks. I haven't talked with the company I work for yet, so if I am able to, I might just sponsor myself because I've tried every I tried casinos. I've tried the online. And nobody has had any interest because I went from having 6,700 followers on TikTok to like 33, and that's just not enough viewers to manage it. But if you like my content, please like, share, subscribe. I don't always remember to ask that because I'm not really a self-promoter. I usually just believe in, doing something well should lead to people supporting you. And I hate to ask, but I got to build up a client base. And the 33 of you that are on here, next year I am going to have some kind of a competition, some kind of prize. It'll probably be gift cards or such. But if somebody beats me, they're going to win a prize. I don't know how big it's going to be because that depends on how well I do in my new career. But the only ones that are going to be eligible are the ones who are subscribed in week 1 next year. So, all of you, that's you. I'll be doing a few videos probably related to film on players. I'll be doing some videos on the NFL draft. And if I can figure out how to use my computer instead of my phone, I might do a mock draft or two. I love mock drafts. I actually did a mock draft where I managed to get the Cardinals both of the tackles in the first round. Kind of proud of that. I had to sacrifice a lot of picks to do it. Worth it. All right. Anyway, hopefully everybody out there safe. Enjoy the weekend, and y'all take care.